Say it again. Part 3.
Okay, just to finalize this idea, understanding what we see. If you open up your eyes today, we see this. There are Jews, and I'm going to call them good Jews, but they're definitely misguided. They're misguided Jews. They go out and they spend their time, their money, their breath, their strength, reaching out to the non-Jewish world. And I'm not talking about people that are interested in observing the 7 commandments of Noah. We stated that clearly. Someone came up to me and he was interested in observing the 7 commandments of Noah. I'm happy to sit with him. It's the proper thing to do. It's the right thing to do. No problem. We're not talking about that. We're talking about all kinds of Christians, all kinds of people with different agendas, all people that still believe in Jesus, etc. So we see these misguided people spending their time, energy, money, going into churches, whoever allowed that one, and spending time with the Gentiles. Listen to the words of Rabbi Dessler in Michtav Eliyahu, in his book on, this is the 3rd volume, page number 118. It says the following: there are 2 types of sanctification of God's name. One is true, one is pure, and one is imagination. One is not pure at all. What? There are 2 types of sanctification. I only thought there was one. To sanctify God's name, you have all these people reaching out to the Christian world, going to their churches, opening up centers for them. And they're all talking about sanctifying the name of God. And here comes Rav Dessler. Here comes Rav Dessler. You know, the reason why I'm laughing is, you know, I saw this card. You know, in Hollywood, they have the lines that people say, you know, they hold them up. So I thought I was supposed to, you know, push a product or something. This is a commercial advertisement we're giving here. Okay, I see you're just hot over here. So Rav Dessler comes with the 1-2 punch. Yeah, he comes with 1-2 punch. And he says there are 2 types of sanctifications of God's name. One is true, one is pure, and one is false. One is just hallucination, imaginary. And now he gives the Jewish guide to sanctification of God's name. Listen closely to the Jewish guide of sanctification of God's name. Not what's in my mind, or what I believe, or what I think. Not interested in what I believe or what I think. What does he say? Number 1, the first level of sanctification of God's name is the following. Is a person himself to become, to worry about yourself, to uplift ourselves, to become a sanctification of God's name. That's number 1. First, take care of yourself. You know, if you ever notice in the English language, all the I's are capitalized. Why? Because in America, everything goes on I. So they capitalize that baby. Interesting. So Rav Dessler says, you can't, you know what I'm saying? If you yourself don't pick yourself up, how in the world are you going to pick somebody else up? Imagine that. A person's like on the ground. How are you going to pick somebody else up? First you have to get up. Once you got up, you pick the other guy up. First you got to get yourself. That's the first level of sanctification of God's name. Never forget it. I wrote Rabbi Kahana when I was about 15 years old from the States. In those days they had these telegrams or whatever they're called. I don't know if they still have those guys. I wrote him, I said, Rabbi, I read your book, Why Be Jewish? And I've decided that when I finish high school in 2 years, I'm going to come and move to Israel, and I'm going to do 3 years in the Israeli army. I'm going to do 3 years in the Israeli army. Rabbi Kahana swiftly wrote back to me. He says, okay, it's great that you're coming, but do not go into the army. First you have to build yourself up. You'll sit some years in yeshiva, in a Jewish study hall, and afterwards we'll talk. That was the greatest piece of advice that was the first greatest piece of advice that I heard from Rabbi Kahana. First, okay, don't worry about the army. Don't worry about the nation. First, pick yourself up, and then you could pick up others. You know, that's the first level of sanctification of the name. Afterwards, the second level of sanctification of God's name is before 10 people in Israel. There's a concept that in order to sanctify God's name, you have to have 10 people. When we pray in the morning, afternoon, or evening, you need 10 people to say various prayers that are considered to be part of sanctifying God's name. They're considered to be Kaddish. They're sanctifying God's name. You sanctify God's name in public. Public, in Jewish public, it means in front of 10 people. Okay, so you picked yourself up. You yourself have become a Jewish sanctification of God's name. Yourself. After that, go out, spread the word to 10 people, which is considered to be a community, 10 people. Go out and spread the word. After that, what's the third level? If you pass those two tests, you've brought yourself to a level of sanctification of God's name through Torah study, through characteristic trait training, through the commandments. You brought yourself, you purified yourself. Afterwards, spread out, baby. Go to the community. Go to 10 people amongst the Jewish people. Go to the Jewish people. Afterwards, there's a level of sanctifying God's name to the entire world. What was that? He brings an example of a sanctification of God's name before the entire world. We know that there's a case. We know that there's a case in the times of Rabbi Shimon ben Shattach, who bought it. It's told in the Gemara in the Jerusalem Talmud in Bava Metzia, second chapter, the 5th law. It tells a story there how Rabbi Shimon ben Shattach told one of his students to go out and buy a donkey. He went out and bought a donkey. That was the Mercedes-Benz of those days. And he went out, and there happened to be hidden in the saddle of the donkey was a precious diamond. So Rabbi Shimon ben Shattach took the donkey that he bought with money, and all of a sudden he sees the diamond. So he says, you know what? Give it back to the person. Give it back to the seller of the donkey. Why is that? Okay, I'm not going to go right now into the law because it's not important right now what he could have done or didn't do. But his take was, you know what? I'm going to sanctify God's name. He did not sanctify God's name by inviting the people over to his house and having house parties and unions and parties and get-togethers and going to his church. No, that's not how he did it. He says, give the guy back his diamond, because I bought a donkey, not his diamond, in order to sanctify God's name. When people see, when the world sees that Jewish people are honest and righteous and straight and just, this causes sanctification of God's name. Once again, it's a Jew doing what he has to do. This creates a situation where other people are influenced, which we will go, God's help, into further detail. When we're talking about light into the nations, we're talking about the Jewish people themselves, within themselves, building themselves up spiritually, and therefore once they do that, there's a spiritual ripple to the nations of the world.